In this video, we're going to look at a little demo of a math tutoring tool, similar to the one we did in an earlier video. We looked at one that gave a rudimentary true or false for the answer to addition problems. This one's going to be using subtraction, but we're going to also make use of our if statements and our if-else statements. So let's take a look at how this works. We are using the random numbers. We are no longer using system time. We are using the math class. So this is a technique we can call math.random, and it will give us a random number, which is a decimal from 0 to 1. And we're going to multiply that by 10, which ends up giving us a random number from 0 to 9. It will never quite be 10, because technically math.random is 0 to 0.999999 infinite. It will never actually give you a 1. And we change that to an int because it will be a double when it comes from math.random. We force it into an int and store it in our number 1, and we do it again to get number 2. Now there's a problem when we're using two random numbers from 0 to 9, I guess they are. If we're teaching a new student subtraction, we don't want to have the second number larger than the first number because they probably don't know how to get negative results yet, and that would be confusing to a second grader. So they don't know negative numbers. So we have a small section here that swaps two numbers, and this is an interesting technique to know. This is used a lot when you start looking at ways to sort long lists of numbers. We use this often. And to swap places with two numbers, you need to use a temporary variable. Okay, so if number 1 is less than number 2, we don't want that. We need to switch them. So we use a temp variable called int temp, okay, to store number 1 briefly. And then we change number 1 to number 2, and then number 2 gets equal to that temp variable. And that virtually just switches the numbers so that number 1 will always be bigger than number 2. All right, so there's an example using an if statement. Simple if with a code block that swaps two numbers if the first one is not larger than the second one. All right, so then we're going to print out to the student what is number 1. So we're concatenating on the number we picked up here minus, it's not going to subtract them. It's actually going to print the minus sign with two spaces around it. The second number with a question mark following it and a space in there so that the cursor isn't right up against the question mark, so it looks nice. We create a scanner and we get the user's input using the scanner.nextInt and store that in answer. Okay. In step 4 of our program, we're going to grade the answer. So we're going to use an if-else statement. If, and this is one, if they got it correct, if number 1 minus number 2 is equal, this is a double equal, is equal to the answer that they typed in, we're going to print out and tell them they're correct. Else, or otherwise, if they weren't correct, this would be false. Their answer would not equal number 1 minus number 2. We're going to print out your answer is wrong. And then we're going to print out number 1 minus number 2 should be, and then we're going to print the correct answer because we're going to subtract number 1 minus number 2, and Java won't make the mistake that the student made. So let's run this and see how it works. What is 3 minus 1? If I put 2, it says you are correct. Okay. What is 3 minus 2? If I put 3, your answer is wrong. 3 minus 2 should be 1. Be nice if we put a period on the end of that. But they didn't, and I'm not going to bother with it right now. So there's a simple math tutoring program for subtracting two numbers. A couple examples of using if statements and if-else statements.